What's growing on, gardeners? It is October, one of the most consequential months in all of gardening. Why do I say that? Well, in October, you can start more seeds for your vegetable garden than at possibly any other time during the year. Yes, that's right. And on today's video, I'm going to share with you a whopping, gigantic, enormous 35 different crops that you can start from seed in October right now.
If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and check out my Amazon store and Spreadshop links in the video description for everything I use in my garden and awesome custom apparel and gear.
If you're new to... I almost stepped on a toad. You really have to be careful around here this time of year. If you are new to my channel, I live on the southeastern coast of North Carolina, Zone 8B. But that being said, all of the crops that I'm going to mention in this video are frost and freeze tolerant. So even if you are well north of me and in a colder zone, all you generally have to do is just pull an agricultural fabric or a frost blanket over your plants if it's going to get too cold for them. So you can still start these seeds right now. Conversely, if you are in a warmer zone than I am, use shade cloth to your advantage. You can take one of those little hoop house structures that I have or some other method of draping shade cloth over your vegetables. So when you set out your transplants or start your seeds, if it's still a little bit too hot, put the shade cloth overhead to shield them. So no matter where you are, chances are you can start virtually all of these crops from seed in October at some point. Throughout this video, I will be featuring many different varieties of the vegetables that I am growing out in my garden. If you're interested in the exact varieties that I am growing, I will make sure to place direct links to the seeds down in the video description for your convenience. Veggie number 1 is the undisputed king of all fall crops, and that is garlic. Why is garlic the undisputed king of fall crops? Well, it is not only one of the most cold-hardy things that you can grow out in your garden, but it is also one of the easiest, lowest maintenance crops that you can grow in fall and all throughout the winter. In fact, if you don't like garlic, I don't trust you because you are probably a vampire. There are two different types of garlic, hardneck garlic and softneck garlic. Hardneck garlic is extremely cold hardy and can grow in hardiness zones 3 through 8, but in reality some varieties can grow all the way down to tundra. We're talking about zones 0 and 1. You can grow this stuff over your winter in northern Alaska. Softneck garlic is more tolerant of warm temperatures and it doesn't need as much overwintering chill or vernalization. You can grow them in zones 5 through 10. Now personally, I like growing hardneck garlic. This is a variety called Music, which is a variety of hardneck garlic. And here where I live in Zone 8B, they can be more difficult to grow because we may have a mild winter and hardneck varieties need more cold in order to develop large bulbs. But there is a trick. All you have to do is take the bulbs of garlic and stick them in a brown paper bag in the refrigerator for 6 to 8 weeks. And that will give them vernalization. So they will accumulate the chill before you plant the individual cloves, and you can get nice big bulbs even in very warm areas. So if you haven't yet ordered your garlic, especially if you need vernalization in the refrigerator, I urge you, order your garlic now. The only downside to growing garlic is there is an initial investment. If you want a fancy variety of garlic, you'll have to spend $25 to $30 and buy some online. However, when you harvest these in June or July, all you have to do is save some of the biggest heads. They will store for months. These are leftover heads that I harvested back in June. They're 3 of my best, largest heads, so I'm going to plant them in fall. So after that initial investment, simply save your best heads of garlic, store them in a cool, dry place, and then you never need to buy garlic again. However, that being said, if you don't care what variety you're growing and you just want lots of garlic, you can just go to the grocery store and buy heads of garlic and plant them. Veggies 2 through 12 are your cabbage-related brassicas, and these are the quintessential crops that we often think of when we think about a fall and early winter garden. Your cabbage-related brassicas include bok choy, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower, collards, kale, kohlrabi, mustard greens, rapini, also known as broccoli rabe, and tatsoi. While your cabbage-related brassicas do share a lot of similarities, there is a decent amount of variability when it comes to extreme cold hardiness. For example, the most cold-tolerant of your cabbage-related brassicas are collard greens, kale, and tatsoi, and many of them can tolerate brief dips down to the 0 to 10 degree range, but many of your cabbages and broccoli and cauliflower and things like that are probably going to take damage somewhere in the 20 to 25 degree range. So I urge all of you, if there is going to be a hard freeze coming, pull some type of frost blanket or agricultural fabric over them. I strongly recommend that you build something like one of these little PVC hoop house structures. I'll link to a video above that will show you exactly how to build one of these in about 30 minutes using nothing but half-inch electrical conduit from Home Depot or Lowe's. I will consistently refer back to covering these vegetables in extreme cold spells because they will last weeks, if not months, further into the winter if you cover them. They may even last all winter long. They will here in Zone 8, likely in Zone 6 and 7 as well if you cover them. Some of these that are extremely cold hardy, like your collards and your kale and your tatsoi, may be able to go even further if you cover them. Many of your cabbage-related brassicas do best grown from transplant, and they're also an excellent way to get a jump start on the season, particularly if you live in a climate where it takes a long time for things to cool down. It is a tragic mistake to wait until it's cool enough to direct sow vegetables to start them. You want to start everything you possibly can indoors. That way, when it finally cools down, you have big, handsome transplants ready to go out into your garden for a big jump start on the season. Crops 13 through 19 that you can plant out in your garden in October are your cold hardy root vegetables, beets, carrots, daikon, parsnips, radishes, turnips, and rutabagas. Now, I know that turnips and rutabagas are technically brassicas, but they truly fit better as a root vegetable because we are going to direct sow all of these. And that is something critical that you must know about these frost-tolerant, cold-hardy root vegetables. They do not do well if you grow them from transplant. That's because once the root gets established, they want to grow straight down and they want to grow out evenly. And if you disturb them, they tend to get kinks or splits in them. If you've ever tried to transplant a carrot, it usually will lead to deformed carrots. So please make sure that you direct sow all of them. In this bed right here, I have lots of carrots and beets that are coming up. While things like beets do benefit from cover if it drops below 25 degrees Fahrenheit, it's really helpful to pull a little agricultural fabric over them. Carrots can take down to 0 degrees Fahrenheit. They are some of the absolute most cold hardy things that you can grow out in your garden. And the best part, all of these root vegetables, for the most part, get sweeter after they are hit from frost and freeze. Root vegetables develop sugar proportional to the cold weather. So when they mature in the summer, they tend to be very wood-like and starchy. They're not very good. But when they mature, when it's nice and cool out, they are all so much sweeter. So for that reason, they are all must-grows out in your fall and winter garden. Crops 20 through 23 that you can plant out in your garden in October are your leafy greens, warm season lettuce, cool season lettuce, spinach, and Swiss chard. At first, it may seem strange to break lettuce into two different categories. I mean, isn't all lettuce the same? No, there is huge variability in temperature tolerance depending on the lettuces that you are growing. That is why we must break them into warm and cool season lettuces. For example, your romaine lettuces, like this giant Caesar variety right here, they tend to form large heads and they need a lot more solar energy to form those heads. These varieties of lettuces like temperatures in the 70 to 80 degree range during the day, and they don't do well with frost and freeze. In fact, even a light frost or freeze can damage a lot of your romaine types. So for that reason, I like to start my romaine transplants indoors when it is still plenty hot outside in late summer. That way I have nice transplants that are 4 to 6 weeks old to transplant out into my garden when it starts cooling down, which for me is usually around October 1st. Now that being said, many of you may have missed the point in the year where you can grow romaine lettuce out in your garden because it's getting too cold too quickly. If you already started your romaine transplants out in your garden and you think there is an early frost or freeze coming, simply pull an agricultural fabric or a frost blanket over them. It will do tremendous amounts of work to protect your romaine. But I'm sorry to say, if you're in, say, zone 6 or colder at this point, it's probably too late for you to grow romaine unless you grow them in containers, in which case you can bring them into your garage if you're going to have a frosty cold night. So if you're willing to do things like like that, grow them in containers in a protected location up against your house, well, that's a game changer, and you can grow romaine types a lot further into the year. Your cool season lettuces, on the other hand, are completely different animals. You don't need to grow these from transplant. These love being direct sown, a lot of times in rows, and they give you huge amounts of flexibility. I have had tremendous success growing these varieties New Red Fire, Marvel of Four Seasons, and Red Sails in my Zone 8 climate. These ruffled leaf type lettuces, they can take really hard frosts and freezes, and they grow much more quickly. These cold hardy leaf lettuces usually have ranges for days to maturity because that depends on if you pick them as cut and come again in rows or as fully formed heads. So this variety here is 21 to 55 days. It's 21 days if you just want to harvest the first few leaves, 55 days if you want to harvest big heads. This variety is 20 to 45 days, and this variety is 21 to 55 days. Last year, I grew the New Red Fire variety of lettuce under this hoop house all winter long, and it took no damage with just a light agricultural fabric over it, even though we got down to as cold as, I think, 15 degrees. By simply keeping the frost off of it, 15-degree temperatures did nothing to them. So even if your romaine season has passed, it is not too late to grow the cold hardy leaf lettuces. Many of you can grow them all throughout the winter, even in very cold zones if you're willing to give them just a little bit of protection. Spinach and Swiss chard are both very easy to grow. They can both tolerate temperatures into the teens, so they are very cold hardy. Spinach is a little bit more challenging to grow in the heat, so if it's still pretty warm, you may want to start this under shade cloth and make sure that you get yourself a bolt resistant variety, but they also make winter varieties of spinach that you can plant if you want more tolerance to cold. Swiss chard, on the other hand, is pretty much bulletproof. It takes the cold and it takes the heat. The only thing that really gets to them are worms and caterpillars. So for that reason, if you have big worm and caterpillar pressure, they can be hard to grow during the summer. I think this plant right here is like an entire year old. It just won't die, and I think I'm going to cut this back and just give it some fertilizer now that the worm and caterpillar pressure is finally dying down, because this is going to regrow and it's going to give me a brand new plant for the winter. Veggies 24 and 25 that you can plant out in your garden in October are leeks and bunching onions. These are part of the Allium family, which is the same family as garlic, onions, and shallots. But unlike them, these don't bulb. We harvest these for the greenery, so they are day-length neutral, and we can plant them at any time during the year. Leeks are what you see in this raised garden bed right here. The entire leek plant is edible except for the massive roots that are underneath. You will cut off the massive roots and then you can eat the rest of it. However, leeks are primarily eaten. This is the part of the leek that is prized right here. This part of the stem, it will turn white, and then you'll chop it up, wash it off really well, and you can use these in pretty much anything that you would use a white onion with. They are very mild and delicious. The greenery is also edible, but I will say the texture is not fantastic. I would recommend you use these greeneries to flavor things like soups and stocks. That way you can put them in to get the flavor, but then pull them back out at the end. Bunching onions are also grown for the greenery. They are sold in the store as green onions or spring onions. So if you've ever bought green onions or spring onions from the store, what you're getting are bunching onions. The bottoms don't really bulb, so you can either pull them like they do at the grocery store and consume all of it, or you can snip off the onion greens as they grow and give them a little bit more fertilizer, and they will keep growing back perpetually throughout their biennial life cycle. So you can keep trimming them as much as you want. Leeks and bunching onions are one of the lowest maintenance, most cold hardy thing that you can grow out in your garden. Pretty much every variety of leek and bunching onion is going to be cold hardy to at least 10 degrees Fahrenheit. However, there are super cold hardy varieties that can go below zero. In fact, many of them, when they're mature, they can stand out in a garden all winter long, and they can sit in snowpack. So whenever you want to harvest them, you just walk out your door, you dig through the snow, you pull up your leeks, or you snip off the bunching onions. I'll link to some extremely cold hardy varieties down in the video description. Here in Zone 8 and Zone 7, you can grow pretty much whatever variety of leek or bunching onion you want. You don't have to be choosy. Crops 26 through 30 that you can plant out in your garden in October are your cold hardy annual herbs, chives, cilantro, also known as coriander, dill, fennel, and parsley. One of my favorite things about fall gardening is that I can finally grow my favorite annual herbs again. You see, almost all of these struggle badly in the heat and bolt and go to seed very easily, but in the cool fall weather, they thrive. Most people are surprised to know that dill is very cold hardy. As long as the dill gradually acclimates to the cold and they don't get smacked with cold weather out of nowhere, they can tolerate pretty frosty temperatures. I've had my dill get down to 20 degrees, and since it happened incrementally, it suffered virtually no damage at all. And things like parsley and cilantro, they're cold hardy down to literally about 0 degrees. But one of the truly awesome things about all of these annual herbs is how quickly they grow. You see, we have an issue in the wintertime where our days get so short and the UV index of the sun drops so low that even if we're having mild temperatures, things aren't growing because the temperatures and the solar energy just aren't there to trigger enough photosynthesis. But the great thing about these cold hardy herbs is they require very little light to grow. You could grow them indoors on a windowsill or underneath a grow light. So if you're looking for things to grow out in your garden when the more energy demanding things can't grow, like your root vegetables and brassicas, look to these herbs because they can do a lot with a little. Which brings me to crops 31 and 32, arugula and sorrel. These crops require virtually no energy to grow relative to everything else that we grow in our gardens. They are often used as microgreens for fine little salad mixes because they grow so quickly and they need so little energy. You can grow these indoors on a windowsill. You can grow them underneath grow lights. If you have one of those indoor vegetable stands that you can buy online for growing herbs indoors, they will grow well. So if you have cold temperatures but your soil isn't covered in snowpack and it's not frozen, you can grow arugula and sorrel throughout the winter because they can keep growing where there's not a lot of solar energy and the day length is very short. So for you folks with high latitudes or cloudy winters, these are perfect vegetables for you. Now the only downside to them is they are very bolt prone. Here where I live, I can only grow these in the dead of the winter because even late February, early March starts getting too warm and things like my arugula will bolt almost immediately. They like temperatures in the 40s and 50s, so if you have a long period of time where the temperatures are in that 40 to 50 degree range, consider growing these crops. End crops 33, 34, and 35 are your chicories, escarole, endive, and radicchio. These crops may be some of the most underutilized and underrated crops in our fall and winter gardens. If you have ever purchased a bag of bagged salad mix and it had these strange looking leaves that were purple with some white streaks in them and they kind of look like baby cabbage leaves, you were probably eating radicchio. Radicchio has a delicious, bold, earthy flavor and it's great to add as a background flavor in salads. And escarole and endive have a delicious, bitter, earthy, peppery flavor. They are fantastic as braising greens and they excel in soups and stews. In fact, if you have ever had Italian wedding soup, which pretty much everybody that's ever has absolutely loved, well, the greens in that soup traditionally are escarole. They are kind of similar to a mustard green. They have a really delicious, bitter, earthy flavor that just adds wonderful texture and background notes to soups and stews. So if you look forward to the cooler temperatures and sweater weather and you love braising yourself some bitter greens, please, I urge you to give these a try. So branch out, add the escarole and the endive to your shopping list, make some soups and stews out of them. If you want to add a little bit of additional flair to your salad, consider some leaves of radicchio. I'm telling you, these are really underrated veggies. Once you know, you know. Some of you may feel really left out by this video. You may think I'm in a very cold zone, I'm at a high elevation, I'm too far at a high latitude, it's too late for me, I can't plant in October. That is where you're wrong. No matter where you live, no matter how cold it is, there are ways that you can grow in October. Even if you can't grow out in your open garden because it's already getting too cold too quickly, there are tricks that you can do. For example, in this little alcove between my sunroom and my house, well, this is the south-facing wall of my house. This absorbs sun all throughout the day and it radiates the warmth back at night. And thanks to the shape of the house and the cover over top from the rain gutters, well, this location is basically impervious to wind and the rain gutters on top, well, they pretty much block the frost, even when it gets really cold. So these little microclimates around your house, you can put grow bags here and you can keep them protected. So you could grow in a little spot like this 1 or 2 months longer because of the way it is protected than you can out in your open in the garden where it is fully exposed to radiative frost and freeze events and lots of wind and cold damage. So don't give up. There are always ways to grow bigger and better no matter what zone you live in. I mean, lots of people told me that North Carolina was way too cold to grow subtropical fruits, but that didn't stop me from growing oranges and avocados, did it? And that right there are 35 awesome veggies to plant in October now for a stunning fall garden. This is truly one of the most beautiful times of the year. So please take advantage of the wonderful weather and start planting some things out in your garden. You may be surprised just how far you can push things if you really try, and you can have a beautiful garden deep into winter. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and please ring that notification bell so you're notified when I release more videos like these. If you're curious about any of the products that I use in real life in my garden, they are all linked down in my Amazon storefront, so expand the video description, click on the Amazon storefront link, you will see everything I use in real life. I also placed direct links down to some of the seed varieties that I featured in this video for your convenience, and while you're down there, please check out my spread shop for custom merch if you want to support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video. Oh, here we go again, Dale. Here we go again with the possum. Another possum, Dale. Come look. We have a third possum, buddy. Oh, I guess we have to set the trap again. Dale. No, buddy. See, now this is exactly why. No, my orange tree. Oh, no. See, this is exactly why I have to get rid of possums when they're in my yard. All right, Dale. We have, Dale, no. We'll set the trap and we'll give Mr. Possum a new home, okay? These are the adventures that we have at 11 o'clock at night.